I do want to say that like it's important to understand that there is multiple layers of psyop within psyop, or I wouldn't even, it's hard to even explain it as a psyop because it's just um people and different entities trying to gain attrition in this psychological warfare that we have, you know?
Yes.
And the fact that like aliens or extra extraterrestrial beings are real. Um, and it doesn't have to be as for lack of better terms dumbed down or like third dimensional like lame brained as humans perceive it as. You know, we don't need, they don't need to have ships, they don't need to have crafts, they don't need to have you know, rivets and structured beings
Mm.
like, you know, you guys I'm sure familiar with Stephen Greer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But like we're talking about uh we are here on earth as spiritual bodies, spiritual vessels that have encapsulated a meat suit driving a skeleton mech, you know what I mean? And we're here in this third dimensional reality to try to uh I guess this is where free will is, right? We have the ability to experience free will,
Mm-hmm.
and we have the experience, the means to experience our own demise or creation as spiritual entities in this world, right? And there was a great book, and I mentioned it in the chat about an hour ago, but and you guys can look it up too. But we're talking about like it's called Fringe Knowledge for Beginners, and it's written by a pseudonym. His writer's name is Montauk, Montalk. You could probably find it on Amazon still to this day. It's only like 100 pages,
Mm-hmm.
but it talks about it really brings together how angels, demons, religion, aliens, our place in the cosmos, what we're doing here as you know, our spiritual meat suits that we're driving here. It really put it into perspective to me in my early 20s when I read this book, and it brought a lot of the things I was questioning as a young boy together, or a young man together. Because I think we can all agree, and I'm not going to speak for you guys. You guys can chime in anytime, but religion and aliens and demons and all of these things are all intertwined. We're
Mm.
all trying to
Mm-hmm.
uh, balance where we are in this cosmos, and
Yep.
we're sitting here in the third dimensional plane, and it talks about dimensional reality. So the third dimensional plane, we have the first dimension, the second dimension, the third dimension, and we're here in this third dimension. This is where we can actually manifest free will as souls in our spiritual soul journey. And then once we, I guess, for lack of better terms, graduate, we reach that Christ consciousness. And you can reach Christ consciousness in a divine or a malevolent way. And there's a fork in the road here in this third dimensional reality that then splits us into higher fourth dimensions and fifth dimensions and sixth and seventh and so on and so forth. But that split happens in the third, and the third dimension is where we diverge into our high, the angel aspect, the higher dimension, the Christ consciousness, the positive, the good, and then the negative, the malevolent, the evil, the dark is, it still goes into a fourth dimension. It's just in a the duality splits, diverges from the third. What do you guys think about that?
I totally agree with a lot of that, and the way you started it by saying it's like the layers of psyops in this stuff. I mean, I think a lot of this is interconnected, and that's why I was kind of hinting at earlier at the end of the bogosphere segment, because I was mentioning how a lot of these people start to say things like, "This is about our human evolution," and I find those phrases so interesting because it's almost like they're looking at the sphere now, looking at it through the like a biblical lens, like a fruit of knowledge. And now this is like this new thing that's going to bring us to a whole new level of information. But it seems like false to me. I mean, I'm sure there's people out there who want it to be real. This thing doesn't seem real to me at all, and that they're trying to attack what you were saying, like the meat suit, the thing that's keeping us locked here in the material world, and keep you divorced from the spiritual world by getting you like literally fascinated by a shiny object. And
Absolutely.
that to me that's part of the psyop. But like there are so many layers to it because it also brings in politics and how you govern. Like we have our politician literally there right now who's on a committee with our taxpayer dollars figuring out what this thing is.
Right.
So it's
Right.
like it's demons, angels, politicians, and all that stuff.
And there's so many layers. Like, yeah, it's hard to really break it down. And when politics are so upfront and in your face, and we're down in this 12-hour cycle
Hmm.
or 8-hour cycle of just chaos and bam, 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 it's all coming at you like drinking out of a fire hose.
Yep.
It's hard to really find that spiritual center again. And then this taps in, like this talks about the kundalini, the resonating of your chakras, like we spoke, like there's books speaking of, we had the birth of baby Jesus, and then we had 30 something years of no Jesus, and then he comes back as a enlightened being. And like there's books and there's talks of him, and there's actual like statues of Jesus in a Buddhist pose, like using the Eastern philosophies that he might have found in his young adult life into this Christ consciousness, and it blends all of these religions together. And I'm not saying one is greater than the other, but I think every religion has a lesson to be taught, and you have to kind of. I mean, I've got all the books on my bookshelf in my living room. I have them all. The Buddha, or the Buddhist
Right.
Bible, the all of them.
And it's
But
why so many religions share a flood story. There is this like the very similar story of the flood throughout many religions and old, ancient stories. So, I think I don't know how to make sense of it all. And in terms of, if there's many floods, I personally think there's just one flood and there's just various interpretations of it,
Sure.
what happened. But, I think that is just more evidence for something
And
like
it
that is
happened
happening.
separately, or might have happened in smaller. It might have not have been a global flood, but smaller regional floods in a transition of the time, or the younger Dryas, and tapping into actually like what Graham Hancock or Randall
Hmm.
Carlson has been speaking of and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like there's historical documentation of this stuff, but with the Boogosphere and this physical manifestation, getting into Project Bluebeam, getting into the harder, the lower vibration, and like maybe that's not the best way to explain it, but when I say lower vibration, I mean more rooted in physical third dimensional reality.
Yep.
Like when they try to use these lower third dimensional reality psyops, like, oh, the aliens are going to come probe us and take our children and rectal exams and blah blah blah. Like
Hmm.
this is innately like attacking our root, our primal fear of animalistic desire, fears and concerns, when we really should be focusing on like a higher frequency.
Hmm.
And then you have the Project Bluebeam, and like right now, like no, like everyone knows about Project Bluebeam, but I don't know if it's ever going to come to fruition. But if it does, it will manifest, and everyone will see exactly what they want to see in the world, across the world. And then we will enter into this great quote unquote globalist utopian no nation state, which is a psyop,
Hmm.
inherently will control us in the third dimensional reality, which is I am in fear of, especially in these trying times with,
Hmm.
tying it in with Israel and all this other stuff. But
Yep.
it's crazy. It's
I,
just absolutely crazy.
The last year, I've been beginning to think that Project Bluebeam isn't going to be this big event in the sky, but it's actually been this slow burning, like mutating of like the collective consciousness that eventually we all just kind of accept something, not because something just happened in the sky above us, but because over time we've all been conditioned to just think something, and then it will probably take a few of these things, like and the sphere is one of those like landmarks along the way. I think they probably rethought Bluebeam. And
Sure.
maybe they'll still project something in the sky. That seems very possible, especially with AI happening, all this stuff. And the way they can manipulate drones in the sky, it is certainly possible. But it's like someone like Sam Tripoli, he would say like they could use Starlink to do
And
that. So anything's possible. But I do think it's like what you're talking about with that lower vibrational fear. It's like down here on the physical world with you and your kids. That's what we would say, like when we're talking about the doom economy. That's where that fits in. But then
right.
it's also the other one to talk about layers of psyops would be the attack on actually the spiritual stuff and how you perceive yourself, your reality, why you're here, what you should do, and all that stuff. And that's just two things. But there's, I think, a lot of different people trying to get in on these situations to take advantage of you, whether it's a government or some influencer asking for money. You know, you just never know. But yeah, totally. Those are great thoughts, man. I appreciate you sharing them.
Yeah, for sure. And like I could, I think you talked about that the psychological of the blue beam, like hunter monkey theory. Like I don't know, look into the 100th monkey theory, but like we don't all have to experience it, but enough if enough people experience it, it happens globally. But yeah, no,
Right.
I love these kind of conversations. I do deep dives on this with my podcast. I'm on Break the Chains Media on Rumble
Oh,
and
cool.
on X, so you can find me at Break the Chains M on X. But
Incredible.
I love listening to this kind of talk, and this is like the modern day coast to coast, and I fucking love it.
Thank you. That's
Thanks, man.
yeah, it's high praise. We appreciate it, man. Thanks for calling in.